Hi everyone, welcome to the Kisrin Academy. In this video, we're going to be talking about Bootstrap 5 forms floating labels. Let's proceed. So floating labels / animated labels, we have by default, when using labels, they normally appear on top of the input field. That is the email label, which with floating labels, you can insert the label inside the input field and make them float or animate when you click on them on the input field. So we have an example, email and password. So it says notes on floating labels. The labels element must come after input element, and the placeholder attribute is required for each input element, even though it is not shown. Let's move to the next part. So in this next part, we have an example. So let's practice our own example around this. So in this place, we're going to have our div, and inside this div, we're going to give a container, say class container, and we'll give it margin top, which will be 3. Then after that, we can just come and we can give it h2, and we can say floating labels. Then after that, we are going to create a form, and inside this form, we don't need anything here. Then after that, we can create a div, and inside this div, what are we going to say? We'll give it a class, and it will come with form floating. Then we'll give it margin bottom, which will be -3, and margin top, which will be -3. Then after that, we're going to give it an input. We'll say input, and inside this input, we want the type to be text, and we'll give it class. Oh, we want the type to be text, and we'll give it class, with the class name should be form control. Then we'll give an ID, with the ID will be email, and we'll as well give it placeholder, which will be email as well. Then we'll give it name, which will be email. Then after this input, we'll give it label, we'll say label. And inside this label, the label will be for email, and we'll say email. Then that's all for this div. After this div, we'll also create another div. Inside this div, we'll give it class, which will be form floating, and we'll give it margin top, which will be -3, and we'll give it margin bottom, which will be -3. Then after this div, so inside this div, we're going to create input, and inside the input, we want the type to be text, and as well, we'll now give a class name, which will be form control, and we'll give it ID, which will be password, PWD. I will give it placeholder, which will be enter password. And we'll give it name as well, which will be PWD. Then after this input, we'll give it label, which the label will be label for PWD. And in this place, we'll have our password. Password. Then after that, after all of this label, and we'll give it the button, and we can say button type, yes, and we'll give it button. So let's check it out. Can you see? This is how we have our floating labels. So that is that for that. Now let's move to the next part, which says text areas and select menus. It also works for text areas, that is comments, and you can also use floating label on select menu. However, they will not float or get animated. This label will appear in the top left corner inside the menu. So this is like a label. So we have example 1, which is text area, and we have example 2, which is select menu. So let's try example 1. We can take this one off it, and this one will change the label to text area. Then after that, after this one, we'll create a form. And inside this form, We don't want anything. Then after we'll create a div. Then inside this div, we'll give it a class name, which will be form, okay, we have one, floating. And we'll give it margin top, which will be 3. I will give it margin bottom, which will be 3. Then after that, we'll give inside this div, we'll give it a text area. We'll say text area. And inside this text area, we'll give it class. We'll give it class, which will be form control. We'll give it an ID, which will be comment. We'll give it name, which will be text. We would as well give it placeholder, placeholder, which will be comment. Comment goes here. Then that's all for the text area. Now we'll give it the label, which will be for comment. We'll say comment, and we can come here and say comment. Yes, so that is it. So after this one, we can give it a button. Now, which will be yes. So this is just it. Now let's check it out before we do our other example. So this is like a text area. Can you see it's floating? So that is that. Now let's move to the next one, which is select button. So in this aspect, we're going to leave our div where we have the form floating. And in this aspect, we're going to create a select. We'll say select. And inside select, we're going to give it class name. Let's just remove all of it. We're going to give it class name, which will be form select. They'll give it ID, which will be cell. And we can just give it that. I will give it name, which will be cell, which will be cell list. And this one, we can give this one cell 1. Then after inside the select button, we'll give it options. We'll give it different options, which they will be 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. We'll also give it another option, which will be, so this option, we don't want it to have value. Option, we'll give it 3. Then we'll also give it another option. We'll give it 4. Then after this select, we are going to give it label. So we'll come here, we'll say label, and inside label, we'll say for cell 1. Then after that, we're going to give it class, which will be form label. And we'll say inside there, we'll say select list. Then we can just probably say select 1, select 1. Yes. So this is it. Then after this label, we already have our button to submit it. Now let's check it out. So can you see, if I click on it, we have multiple options to select. So that is that for different areas. Thank you for watching this video. Please do well to follow us across all socials at Tech Academy. See you next time. Bye.